Good morning. You're looking at a field of Brassica carinata, and first thing folks say sometimes is, what is carinata? A common name would be Ethiopian mustard, and it's a crop we've been looking at the last few years after some real positive experiences in Florida. A multi-state research group decided to look from Mississippi to Florida and up to North Carolina to see how many acres in the southeast U.S. are appropriate for this crop. It's again, a Brassica winter annual oilseed crop. Some of the positive things are there's potential for a biofuels market. About half the total seed weight is oil and the other half is a meal. And the overall project again is looking for uses for both the oil and the meal. We think it's a good fit for a double crop in North Carolina, going after corn before soybeans. Similar to another winter annual wheat, what seems to be critical is getting it planted early enough to get good vigorous growth before we get into the real cold spells in winter. We're recommending 2 to 3 weeks before the first frost. Additionally, similar to wheat, the late winter freezes can damage the flowers, and we're looking into that. Like a summer annual crop soybean, interestingly, we can get quite a bit of branching. And again, from each branch, we can have secondary branches. And from each node on the main stem branch and secondary branch, we can have flowers. So there's a tremendous potential to produce flowers and pods. We don't entirely understand that yet, but learning to work with that is going to be a key to getting high seed yields. Based on earlier work, we think 40 to 60 bushel an acre yields are achievable. And what you're looking at here is a uniform planting of one of the most likely commercial genotypes. And what we're doing is taking monthly samples to look at total dry matter, and then we're partitioning that, separating out leaves, stems, flowers, and seeds, having those analyzed separately. So we're creating a database of the plant growth rate during the year, as well as nutrient uptake and harvest nutrient removal. Based on some earlier work from Florida, 4 to 5 tons per acre dry matter will be produced, and we may be harvesting off 150 pounds of nitrogen. Similar to other crops, the majority of the nitrogen comes off in the seed, majority of the phosphorus comes off in the seed, probably a third or so of the potassium comes off in the seed, the rest is in the residue. And it's also a fairly heavy user of sulfur and boron. We do have some standard fertilizer recommendations in a production guide. A basic program might be 90 to 100 pounds of nitrogen. We'd recommend P and K applications based on soil test, probably 20 to 30 pounds of sulfur and a pound of boron per acre. Some interesting things about the overall project. Most of the work we're doing here, of course, focuses on production agronomy, but the overall multidisciplinary SPART project has teams to reduce barriers to commercial adoption of carinata. The feedstock development team is what we're working with here, and that's producing the crop and managing it. There's a fuel and co-products team, which is looking at processing the oil and the meal into marketable products. There's a meal efficiency team, which is looking at the feeding it to livestock. A team called System Metrics and Modeling, which is looking at environmental issues like benefits to global carbon cycle and also to modeling economic projections. There's a supply chain team, which is looking at the logistics of industrial handling, an extension and outreach team to be more efficient in providing information from the project. And then there's also an academic training team, which is trying to develop more opportunities for undergraduate, graduate, and postdoctorate education. So we've also got information at websites where you can look up on North Carolina Small Grain website. We've got images of specific nutrient deficiencies, and we've developed these here based on hydroponic studies. One thing we want to do with future field studies is verify whether or not that careful controlled work is similar to what we're seeing in the field. We also would like to take our field approach at fertility management and apply that to the best varieties that come out of the genotype studies. Additionally, we do have a lot of poultry litter in North Carolina, so we'd like to evaluate how to best use poultry litter to fertilize this crop.
Earlier today, we heard from Dr. Carl Crozier talking about a new winter oilseed called Brassica carinata, or Ethiopian mustard, that we could potentially grow here in North Carolina. This crop's being tested across the southeast in several states, and we're one of the testing locations here in the Piedmont of North Carolina. We are testing 20 lines at this location, and it behaves very similar to canola or industrial rapeseed if you've ever grown that crop. In this case, we have 20 advanced lines, and they are at varying maturities right now. These were all planted November 13th, which is slightly outside of what I would expect our optimum planting window to be in North Carolina. And so for that reason, we have seen a little bit of freeze damage on this particular test. In the 20 advanced lines that we have here, there are multiple open pollinated lines, which is similar to what we see in other oilseed crops. And there are also a couple of hybrids that are looking at the option to release as commercial lines. In the background, you can see Brassica carinata that's already flowering. This was planted almost an entire month earlier on October the 7th and is an advanced line that has been previously commercially available. You'll notice there are several weed species infesting our plots out at this location. We have common groundsel, we have wild mustard, and also a little bit of wild radish out here. It's particularly challenging to control broadleaf weeds in this crop. We do have the option to use graminicides or grass herbicides that can control the grasses, but when it comes to broadleaves, it's more challenging. In the research behind these plots, we have planted a lot of bulk plots that our weed scientist at North Carolina State, Dr. Ramon Leon, is working on evaluating multiple modes of action of herbicides to see what will kill carinata and what will be safe and effective at controlling these weeds. Another aspect of carinata we're looking at is planting date. There have been successes in Florida and further south than us, but it's not clear in North Carolina exactly when would be the optimum time to plant. We're looking at times between 3 and 4 weeks before the first killing frost, and so we wanted to put multiple planting dates out of several varieties and see how they perform in our state. The plan for this test was to take 4 of the varieties in our G/E study and put those out at 4 different planting dates 1 month apart, starting in September and ending in December of 2019. The challenge with that came with an extremely wet and mild winter. We were not able to get into the field except for the first planting date, which ended up being October 7th. In this case, we did get all 4 varieties planted at that time, and since then we have started with some spring planting dates. Last year in North Carolina, we were very successful with a spring planting of carinata in March. So we started at the beginning of March, around March 9th, we planted our second planting date. Our third planting date was planted March 16th, and we'll have a 4th planting date of these same varieties that'll be going out in another week from now. You can see the ones that are already flowering. We do have 3 yellow flowered varieties and 1 pale flowered variety. Right now they all look very similar to one another, but as they complete flowering, you'll see plant structure change a little bit, and the way that they hold their calyx and seed pods will vary between the different varieties. We'll also be taking information on how much seed shatters to the ground between varieties to look at varieties that have more shatter resistance potentially. And in this case, we did have some freeze events that caused severe damage in this crop that was planted in October on one particular variety. As a winter oilseed crop, one of the main things we worry about is harvest timing. We're always concerned about whether or not it's going to overlap with our other winter crops such as wheat or barley, and we also worry about whether we can get our summer crop in on time. This crop should make a good rotational option for us to harvest in a timely manner and get our summer crop planted on time. This crop will be ready around the last week of May and the first week of June in North Carolina, pretty much no matter what time it's planted, whether it's planted earlier or later in the fall. In addition to that, it's possible that you could use a harvest aid to dry the crop down a little faster once you start to see seed color change reach about 70% in the spring. This is a little bit different than canola or industrial rapeseed. If you've grown that crop before, you're looking for a color change in those crops to be from green to dark brown or black. In Brassica carinata, the seed is a light yellow to rust color, and so you're looking for color change from green to that rusty orange color instead of all the way to black.